So it's been a while, but I am back with a brand new costume to make. I am actually really excited to start this one because this character means a lot to me, so reveal. It's Bridget from Guilty Gear Strive, who I just fucking adore, and I'm so excited for her to be back in this game. Fun fact, Bridget was actually my very first male costume back in 2007, and she helped me a lot in kind of my own gender journey. So I am super excited for her to be back in the game and revisiting her own gender journey, and it's just been phenomenal. So let's get to some fabric choices. So here's kind of the gist of what I've got. These two are neoprene for the jacket. I'm doing that kind of off-white tan thing, more like a sweater, because it reads very much like schoolgirly to me. So I'm just gonna fucking go with it. And then I have a stretchy pleather black, as well as a nice heavier like satin black for the skirts and the collars, and then parts of the shoes. And then I have some notions and some zippers and some drawstring stuff for the jacket as well. I haven't gotten some of the heat transfer vinyl for the jacket yet, but that doesn't matter because I'm starting with the underlayers anyway. So I guess follow me in this journey if you also want to make this costume or just interested. I don't know, whatever. So today I'm starting on Bridget's pleated skirt. Pleated skirts are pretty easy. You just need 3 times the length of your waist, and then however long you want it to be plus a little. I serged all the edges, and then I did my hem at the bottom before starting to pleat everything. So here you can see I kind of marked these little 2-inch spaces. I left the first one for the zipper, and then you're going to kind of see how I'm going to pleat it and kind of mark everything. This is actually why you need 3 times the length to get the proper length of the pleat, because you use 3 times as much for 1 pleat. So that's 6 inches for just 1 2-inch pleat. And then I pin everything up and at the top, and I just kind of continue going for a long time. You should be left with a little longer than your waist measurement. And as you can see here, I have this last part folded in because that's, again, where I'm putting the zipper. So it kind of lays almost invisibly. I should have left a little bit more on this one, but fuck it, I don't care. But you can see how that zipper is gonna be all nice and hidden in there in the end. Then I'm going to iron the absolute shit out of this with some starch, and look at all those nice pleats. I also sewed the top of it so that way everything stays in place while I'm putting in the zipper, which is the next step. I go ahead and do the bottom portion. I'm just following standard instructions for an invisible zipper, and also using an invisible zipper foot, which is always very helpful. Now you can see that finished zipper, and I'm on to the waistband, which is the last piece. I did a little longer than my waist because I want some overlap. And you can see I kind of made this really fake bias almost, with one side shorter, one side longer. I attached the shorter side to the skirt, and then I sewed it, and then I sewed the edges, flip it around, and then do a stitch in the ditch method for the rest of that. So now I have this little piece that kind of hangs over on the edge. I'm using a button, but you can use a hook and eye. And see, that's where we're done. We finished. Good job. Made a skirt. Neat. Today I am working on Bridget's short shorts, and I used a pattern, which I'll point out here, that I had to make a lot of modifications for, so proceed at your own risk. I first cut out all my fabric, and then I sewed the 2 sides together, but this was really big on me despite the measurements, so I just added a side seam because I didn't care if it had a side seam or not. I just serged everything because it's stretch. I sewed together the waistband, and you can see it doesn't fit. It's really fucking stupid. I don't understand why it's that small, but whatever. So I made another one. I actually doubled up the waistband like you see, and I'm going to serge the top, so the top's all nice and actually makes the waistband a little bit more sturdy, and now I don't have to add elastic up there. I did one of the little scrunchy butt things because my ass needs all the help it can get, but the measurements were wrong, and I don't want to pick out the elastic because it'll leave holes in the pleather. So I just serged the top on as it is, and now I made some adjustments to the hem because again, this was really weird and long for some reason. I hemmed it the same way I did the knits in my Haku video, so if you want more information on that, please see that. And there is the finished product with the shorts and the skirt, and it's all so cute. Yay! So on this episode of Bridget's Work in Progress, I'm going to be doing the underlayer collar thing of the sweater shirt thing. I'm making it 2 pieces just because I can. I think it's a lot easier, so I'm going with this pattern that I use for fucking everything. I'm just gonna modify it a little bit, starting with a mock-up just to see where I have to modify things. I added a seam down the front. I also needed to lengthen one of the sides, and I did that curve on the collar. So then I'm gonna cut all my pieces out and start sewing them together. I did the shoulders first, that way I can add the 2 sides of the collars separately. This means that I can now do that front stitch all the way up into the collar, and it's gonna be really nice and straight and smooth, just like that. Then I'm gonna add in the collar lining and also hem the sides of the sleeves. It's a lot easier while it's open like this. I did a stay stitch on the lining there, and you can see all my edges are with a twin needle. Now I just gotta do the sides, and I'm adding in that separating zipper to the back. Once that zipper was in, I am going to do a top stitch on it, and then I'm also going to hem the bottom just like that by folding it underneath, and again using a twin needle just to make sure everything is nice and stretchy. And there we go, the final product of that kind of under top. Today I'm working on Bridget's top, which I've kind of interpreted as a sweater vest for that schoolgirl kind of look. To pattern this, I used a shirt that I already had, just flipped it inside out and kind of corrected things as need be. To pattern the collar, I kind of do this cheat where I sew up the shoulder seam, and then I have this clear cut image of what the inside of the collar is going to be, and then I can kind of just draft something based off that. You can similarly do this on a dress form or mannequin if you have one. I went ahead and tried everything on, making adjustments as needed. As you can see, I added that little extra piece. Once I was happy with everything, I cut it out of the real fabric. I was actually really nervous about doing the collar because of the zipper, but it wasn't horrible. I used a double-sided stabilizer, as you can see here, to help sew on the zipper. And then I did quite a few mock-ups of the heat transfer vinyl before settling on something. I really liked how this turned out, but I did fuck up one side. As you can see right there, the vinyl kind of melted a bit more into it than I would have liked. Such is life. I attached the collar, I attached the lining, and then I made this little piece at the bottom, kind of just as a little finisher. I know it seemed weird to have it all one piece and not have that little section in the bottom. I originally went with a thinner ribbon, but I like this thicker one more. I pinned it in the back so I know where I could hand stitch it, and used a lighter for the edges so it wouldn't fray, and here's what we got for the most part. Yay! So today we're talking about Bridget's jacket, and this is going to be long and chaotic, so strap in. I started with a pattern from Form Pattern Shop on Etsy, and it was just for a baggy hoodie. I made my first mock-up and altered things based from there, like the sleeve length and the hood, and whatever the hell is going on with the back of that jacket, I don't even fucking know. So I made my second mock-up, and I hated the sleeves, so I made another pair of sleeves, and I like those a lot better, and somehow this came out decent. I mentally gave up on the hood, so I just started working on the heat transfer vinyl so I could actually start working on the jacket and just save the hood for later. My Cricut machine is always the MVP, but bless Athena and Ashley for helping me vector out those images. The back panels have top stitching, so I had to do them in a very specific order, and then somehow the back came out decent. Yeehaw! Now that the back piece was put together, I could actually cut out the lining in the size I need, and because no golds are alike, I had to dye my strings, so here we are. Yay, matching, yeehaw! While neoprene does keep its shape pretty well, I knew I was going to have to use some kind of stabilizer, so I chose to make kind of like a mini tutu petticoat thing in the sleeves, and then I kind of just look like a mariachi band member. I don't know. So I finished sewing up the lining and wanted to do the cuffs on the sleeves before I sewed the sleeves all together, just because it's a little easier to put everything together when it's flat, and then I can just attach the lining later. And even though the lining wasn't attached, I wanted to do a fit test, and as you can see, those sleeves stay nice and poofy. And then it was on to the dreaded hood part, and after a lot of patterning, I ended up with a 3-piece hood with an actual band that goes around the head to keep it in place, kind of like an actual nun veil habit thing. I then went back to the bottom of the jacket to do the hem parts, so that way I knew how long the zipper needed to be and where it needed to attach. Once that was in, I went back to the hoodie to add in the little grommets so I can put in the little string thingamabobber. I don't know. See, there it goes. Yay. Next was attaching the buckles on the side of the hood. Mine are from Blushing Violet Props on Etsy. I then stitched everything down and I caught the cording in there so that way it wasn't just rattling around in the hood. And then it was a time to attach the lining and the zipper and start putting everything together. I used a stitch and a ditch method to attach this piece, but I actually hated the way it looked, so I'm probably gonna undo that and hand sew it like I did with all of these other pieces. Yes, there is a fuck ton of hand sewing. Then I'm finally adding that white headband and attaching that to the hood and kind of hand stitching that down in place, and we have a finished jacket. Finally. Holy shit, that took forever. Alright, so today we're talking about Bridget's shoes, and this was a chaotic process. I bought these super cheapo shoes off of Shein because I really liked the base and I thought it was pretty similar, and I just took off that little metal piece, but I might keep it. I don't know, it's kind of cool, but not right now. I'm going to do a very vague patterning wrap with cling wrap and Reynolds wrap and tape because I don't have duct tape, and this is what the thing is, sort of. I cut up the original pattern and started using foam, as you can see here, I put the foam on the fabric so that way it doesn't bleed through the fabric when I attach everything with contact cement. I also do try to sew certain parts so it's a little bit more stable. And again, just making new and better patterns as I kind of go along. Making sure to add all these stitching details before I glue them to the shoe because that would be really fucking difficult. And I'm just using elastic for the straps because it's a lot easier to get my foot in and out of it as opposed to using like a vinyl. And then there's that final back piece that I stitched, and now it's actually looking like a shoe, which is pretty fucking neat. I used the same heat transfer vinyl as used on the jackets on these little pieces of foam to make these, and I just glued them directly to the shoe. And once again, more heat transfer vinyl for these little decals. Next up was kind of pinning and attaching everything, and I just didn't want to do that. So I started on that big weird white thing. The reference shows a little bit of a trim on those, so I did add this little piping detail, and I actually think that helps give it a bit more dimension. And once again, it's stuffed with foam. Then I reluctantly moved to all of the bias tape, which I sewed but then had to hand stitch the back on. And I did this in the hotel, so yeehaw procrastinating. Once I stitched down all that bias tape, it was time to finish up the little white pieces, and I think I'm actually going to edit these for my next wear. I like the shape, but because it's kind of like empty in there, I think it doesn't hold as well. But here we are. Yay, shoot. So today we're talking about Bridget's very unrealistic handcuff. Props aren't my specialty, so just keep that in mind throughout this video. I found this guy at Spirit Halloween and thought it'd be perfect for the change because that means it's less for me to make. And then I made a bunch of drafts trying to figure out what the right size for my hips would be in there, and then kind of figuring out a generalized shape from there. And of course, matching up the chain to make sure everything fits nicely. I was originally going to make this out of foam core board, but the only kind I could find had this on the other side, which made it very heavy, so I had to rework things. In the meantime, I worked out the pattern so that it would actually open and close so I could put it on easily. And then I found my insulation board at a thickness I liked, and that's what I decided to use. So here's everything all cut out. I have the 3 different pieces, and then I have this piece on the inside, which I'm going to put a magnet in, as you can see here, so that it stays closed. And I did the placement for the hole so everything can come together at the end. As you can see, I covered it with Warbler. I travel a lot for cosplay, so I wanted to make sure it was durable. And then this is the little nut and bolt maneuver that I'm using, and it all kind of just came together there. I painstakingly did all 3 layers in the Warbler, and that was awful, and now I have the fun time of sanding it all. I used a primer and filler, as you can see, my really janky setup, and it was just a process of filling and sanding and filling and sanding, and then finally painting the finished piece and using a clear coat on top. Throughout this process, I completely forgot I wanted to add a magnet to the back, so now I have to go back and do that later, but the whole thing is actually done. You can see me putting in all the little nuts and bolts, and it opens and closes, and see it just nicely twists on top. And then here we have the finished product. See, it's obviously not as big as Bridget's, but that's impossible. But I'm gonna add the little piece on the back so that it all magnets together and it'll sit nice. Yay! So like I mentioned in the last video, I forgot to put the magnet in like an idiot, so here I'm explaining how I put that in. I carved out a little section with the heat knife and then added that Warbler in, and then I added another magnet on top just for some added strength. Then I sewed a little pouch on where it's going to sit on the top of the skirt, inserting some more magnets to make sure everything stays in place. And then voila, it just magically stays. I haven't tried it with the sweater yet, but I'll probably need an additional magnet somewhere just because it's another layer for the magnet to go through. But as you can see, it's pretty sturdy and I'm pretty happy with the final product.
The town inside me and everyone's voice, only I'm not there, just watching from afar. I